Hello, everybody, and welcome to the League Bound podcast where we discuss draft prospects and the rising stars of the NBA. I'm your co host, Brandon, and today I'm here with my guys, Cameron and Jake. How are y'all feeling today?
Yeah, I'm excited for this one. We got the finals starting, which means it's the perfect time of year for us. We got draft coming up and a ton of stuff to talk about with these teams that are trying to get to the NBA finals but need some new pieces.
Nah, it's my favorite time of the year. I'm really excited. Ready to get going on some of the teams that we're gonna cover today.
Yeah, so today we're going to be doing a draft preview of two teams specifically. We have the Philadelphia 76ers at pick number 3, and we're also going to be doing another preview for the Charlotte Hornets. But the Sixers have the third pick in the draft, and for a lot of people, that's where they think this draft starts to really get interesting, especially if you view Flag and Dylan Harper as the two best prospects in this class. And I think the Sixers are an interesting team for a number of reasons. Not only do they have the draft pick where, like we said, it starts to get a little bit interesting, but they're a team where, they had a lot of injuries this year and they definitely underperformed expectations and were considered to be contenders coming into the year, especially after adding Paul George. And just one thing that I think is kind of interesting before we get into the preview is they're a team that's also kind of, even though they had a lot, it didn't go like they wanted to. I think they had some successes in terms of Jared McCain. He was a rookie who they added, and although he didn't play a full season, he definitely exceeded expectations, especially for where he went. And then they also made another late season acquisition in Quentin Grimes, who seems like a guy he could be a contributing piece down the line. And so I think it really puts the Sixers in an interesting position just because obviously they have a bunch of older players like Embiid and George as well, but they do have some younger players who could maybe give this team more of a clear direction outside of those two guys. So I know during the mock draft I talked about what I would do, and I know I've been talking for a minute, but now I kind of want to open the floor to you guys. With all that in mind, being a part of the Sixers fan base and being in their community, it seems like the two main picks people want to take right now are between Bailey and Edgecombe. But the school of thought is kind of you go for Bailey if you want to go after somebody who can be more, maybe not a key contributor right away, but has more upside. And you also, the other school of thought is you go for Edgecombe, and that way you can get a piece who can come in and contribute right away. So I want to ask you guys now, just kind of as objective fans, what would you guys do if you were in this position, or would you go for somebody, not even one of those two, but somebody else in the draft?
Yeah, I think my answer here is kind of contingent on what team they want to be. Like, are you guys really going all in to try to win with this Embiid version of the roster, or are you guys more so looking towards like what the next iteration of 76ers basketball is going to look like? I think one thing that like this year's kind of shown me is that like as a team you should probably draft not necessarily solely for fit, but like you have to draft guys that fit your organization. And in that way, like I'm a huge Ace Bailey guy. Like I think to me I have him like solidly above Edgecombe, but Edgecombe I think might fit what you guys want to do a little bit more. So if I was the 76ers, I would probably consider Edgecombe just because it seems more in line with what you guys want to do is like a culture, which you guys coach, kind of how he coaches, how he wants to play. I just think he kind of fits what you guys do better.
Do we think that either one of Ace Bailey or VJ Edgecombe would be a day one starter for Philadelphia? So let's say Jared McCain is fully healthy day one of the season, and you've got Maxey, you've got McCain. You would anticipate with the money that Paul George is being paid, he'll be in the starting lineup, hoping to have a much better season, even though he is 35. And then with Embiid, if he's healthy, nobody is taking his spot really, even around the league. So I don't know if either one of these guys are going to be a day one main starter contributor. So I feel like that might impact the decision a little bit because some other teams at the top of this draft, they're taking a guy that they're hoping can be at least maybe a number two option offensively. But Philly, like you said, Brandon, they're kind of in this position where they're at the top of this draft, but they don't necessarily need to lift up this franchise right away. So I personally think because of that factor, you have the ability to take a swing on an Ace Bailey and hope that his upside hits. And once Paul George eventually moves on or retires, you could slide right into that small forward position, not even just in the future, but maybe at some point later on down the line in this season.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting because, for one, I feel like going with Edgecombe, like, to be honest, I don't think I would be upset with either pick, honestly. But I think my concern with going with Edgecombe is that I feel like we have a lot of guards on this team already. And get like based on the player he is, I'm not mad about that. But I think we also kind of saw this season with Maxi, and granted, there were a lot of injuries, and like, if this team is healthy, I don't think he would have to be a lead option. But it did seem like this season he kind of struggled, like being the number one guy in a lot of instances, and like I think his game is a lot better when he kind of has other people he can play off. And I feel like Edgecombe is kind of similar in that he's definitely not somebody you want leading, taking shots off the dribble. I feel like for one, the way he plays, he's going to be an off ball guy. Defense is kind of his calling card, if you will. And for me, I think the reason why I lean more towards Bailey is not only the upside, but I feel like, I'm just looking at hypotheticals down the line. Like, say we do move on from Embiid or we do move on from George. I feel like I don't necessarily see him being a number one guy, but I feel like at the same time, it makes Maxi's role a little bit easier in that if he's even what we project him to be a little bit, you also have a guy out there who can maybe handle the ball a little bit, initiate actions a little bit. And you can't forget that we also have Jared McCain as well. But I think it's interesting because I feel like you also have to think about how many guards there. There's Grimes as well. And I know he's only under contract for one more year and he could be gone. So I feel like just as a fan, I'm going through all these situations and I'm just kind of thinking out loud, like, it kind of reminds me of the Warriors a few seasons ago. When it's like they had a mixture of all those older guys and those younger players, and it was like
The two timelines thing they kept trying
yeah,
to preach that they were going to try to win now and set themselves up to win in the future, which I think we kind of saw like that didn't really work out too well. Like they kind of fumbled a couple of the draft picks that they had at the top of the draft. I think that's a trap that you guys like. I think this pick is like really important for you guys to nail just for that reason. Because I think it could really hurt you guys if you don't take advantage of this opportunity. Because I don't know when you guys will be picking this high up in the draft again.
yeah, and that kind of leads into something else too, because I think there's also a lot of people who I know Maury said that he's gonna try to draft here, and if I were the GM, I think that's what I would do. But I feel like there's also a good portion of people who are like maybe trade back and try and add something to. So I guess with that being said, Cameron, do you think that, and I guess you kind of answered it, but do you think that it makes more sense to pick here and try and build something for the future? Or do you think that you should trade back and just try and compete now, per se?
So to me, I actually think it's kind of like to me, the answer to that is dependent on how your board is set up. So, what is your difference? I guess I'll ask this to both of you guys. What is the difference between VJ and Ace and let's say Trey Johnson and Con Knipple for you guys? Like, how big is that gap, if there is one?
I'd say for me, the main thing is just I feel like all those guys can be solid contributors, but the reason why I put Ace higher than all of them is mainly just because of the long term upside. And again, that's not a sure thing.
Yeah, I feel like if you are, so we know chances are someone that they draft up here is going to start off the bench. If they want to fully commit to trying to win now with how open the top of the East should be next year, uh, you maybe don't necessarily hate trading down 4 or 5 slots, maybe picking up a valuable piece that could contribute right away. And someone like a Con Knipple or another one of these maybe less dynamic type of players like an Ace Bailey could be if he hits, but could come in as a rookie off the bench and provide some good things while also picking up a valuable piece from another team.
Yeah, so I guess my question is like for Brandon, you're a fan of the 76ers. Would you rather come away if I told you you could come away out of this draft with either Ace Bailey or let's say you guys trade down and you end up with Trey Johnson and a solid veteran player. Like I watched the Sam Vecini's their podcast did a 76ers offseason breakdown. And they threw out there the possibility of trading the pick for another pick in the draft and someone like Cam Johnson or Herb Jones. Like, do you think which one would you rather have? Would you rather have Ace and all his upside or a player later in the draft with less upside and somebody who can come and help this team right now?
See, for me, I don't think I'd be too mad about walking away with Trey Johnson or Cam Johnson. Like, I think Trey is also another guy who I've always been high on, or liked, I should say. I shouldn't say high. But, and Cam Johnson, I think, is probably one of the most valuable players on the market right now, or in terms of just, 3 and D. But I think the part that would really, I guess, hurt me is say 2 or 3 years down the line and we see Ace Bailey become like another, okay, I'm going to use this comparison. Obviously, at the time, like Markelle Fultz was like the consensus #1 player in most eyes. But we drafted him. He had the stuff that happened with his shoulder. And then obviously Jason Tatum, in hindsight, it's like 6'9", can handle the 6'9", 6'10", can handle the ball, can shoot, can score, and we see what he's done. I mean, sure, people clown on him, and I'm a Celtics hater, so, I take part in it. But I respect the player that he is. But I think if I had another situation like that where, okay, we see a player who can be really, really good, and he doesn't, and, he becomes an all-star, a perennial all-star, and we didn't draft him, I think a part of that would hurt. But at the same time, it also really just depends on the result of like what we get out of next season, especially since in the East, I feel like obviously the Pacers are in the finals, but even
It's
if they do,
wide open.
yeah, even if they do win the chip, I still feel like it's wide, like wide open. So I think it would hurt in that sense of if he became a star and like we missed out on that. But at the same time, I think we're also in a league now where you have to have so many good players, and it's not like the late 90s, early 2000s where it's like you maybe have 1 or 2 stars. It's like your whole roster has to be pretty well rounded. And I will admit, even though we did battle a lot of injuries last year, defensively, it was just not, it was not pretty. And I feel like even when we are healthy, like, yeah, we'll have Paul George, but I don't think he's the same.
Yeah, he's
Maybe
lost
just,
a step on that end.
yeah. So I think it really just, I feel like this is a cop out answer, but I really just feel like it depends on the result of what would happen like that next immediate year. Like if we don't make it to the conference finals and then Ace Bailey goes on to become a star, I'd be pretty upset. But
So for me, I think just the way I could kind of see the draft shaking out, to answer your earlier question, I would be open to trading down if I could stay within the top 8. Like if I think any further than 8, I think I'm probably not answering the phone, to be honest. But I mean, ultimately, it's like how attached are you guys? Like, because in order to make a trade down work, you probably would be getting rid of guys like Kelly Oubre and like Andre Drummond. So I'm not really super attached to those guys, to be honest. And I do agree with you. I think one thing we're learning from this finals is that like you need more than 5 guys. Like you actually need like 8 to 9 guys to really be competitive in this league. And I think if you can turn this draft pick into 2 solid contributors, I think that's probably the best route. So I think I would actually lean towards trading down and praying that one of Trey or Conklin